Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live. It is a great day to be a football fan, unless you're a fan of one of the teams that lost. But that said, if you loved football, this is what it's about. Anthony Cervino, I'm going to go through a few business points, and then we're going to see what's going on with you, and then we're going to tear into this thing quickly. The business points. The conference championship playoff notes, I will have those ready Tuesday. To get access to those, go to my X profile at Jim Coventry NFL. Then this week, the notes were really, really on point. Missed a lot of things wild card weekend. Anyway, this show, Anthony will be back next Monday. I'll be on Tuesday. We'll go through early game previews. We'll also check in late in the week for some props. The Monday and Tuesday before the Super Bowl, you won't want to miss it. We have a marathon, 58 analysts for Super Bowl 58. More info on that, but it'll be the Monday before the Super Bowl and then the Tuesday evening. 2 different days. Great marathon. Finally, Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio 87. I'm going to be on overload this week. I'm working Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'll be up from 8 to 10 Eastern on that show. 8 to 10 Eastern. And then Saturday and Sunday, 1 to 3. So I'm going to be on for like 6 straight days. You'll get sick of me, but that's where you'll find me. And also, at RotoWire, we got your fantasy and gambling content for every sport. College basketball, golf, NASCAR, bowling, of course, baseball, football. Free 2-day trial, no credit card. RotoWire.com/radio. Anthony Cervino, say hello and the initial thoughts before we get into that Chiefs-Bills game.
Man, I'm still recovering from divisional weekend, especially the last 3 games. Let's just get right into it.
Yeah, I love it. We have to start with Chiefs-Bills. So here we go, Anthony. And I'll make some points about the first half. We'll talk about that, and then we'll get further into the craziness. So look, this was not your typical Chiefs-Bills matchup before the game. We thought these were 2 flawed teams, much more than in the past. But what ended up getting was a similar result. The Bills come out running, and we've learned that since Joe Brady took over, Anthony. Since Joe Brady took over, Cook was a bigger part of the game. They ran, but they knew they had an edge against the Chiefs. They ran for 124 yards in the first half, only threw for 111. Now, KC, a little bit more balanced. They knew they needed to run, but they weren't going to miss out on those opportunities to pick on the injured linebacker core, and it was a real problem. A.J. Klein out there, smart dude, can't cover. But the Bills, they were just tearing up the clock, rolling the clock, and the Chiefs were scoring fast. 17-10 at the half, only 1 punt. Now, since the Bills got the ball first, that gave them that 17-10 lead at the half. What were your thoughts on the first half of that game?
You know, the whole game, but really the first half, it seemed like Buffalo had a little bit of an edge. And Buffalo really, they were doing what they wanted to do, especially Josh Allen on the ground. If you bet the over on his rushing attempt prop, which was my biggest bet of the weekend, I had multiple units on that. I believe he had 8 of the 9 at halftime. And he was having a lot of success with that. But I did see that Buffalo was kind of leaky in terms of throwing the football. They weren't having as much success as I thought they would. And then we saw the Chiefs. You can't keep the Chiefs in the football game. And Buffalo was doing everything they could to try to get a lead. And it seemed like Kansas City, like first couple of drives, they weren't punching it in. I'm like, this is going to be a problem because Buffalo's scoring touchdowns. Kansas City's kicking field goals, but going into halftime, you just saw the momentum shift in Kansas City's favor.
Well, we come out into the second half, and the third quarter, we got some scoring. I mean, it ends up that the third quarter, we're 27-24 going into the fourth. And at that point, Josh Allen, what a dime on that third and long pass to Khalil Shakir. Inside corner of the end zone. How many quarterbacks in the league could have made that throw? Josh Allen just looked like Superman. But that third quarter, it really looked like we were going to have a big crescendo for the fourth quarter. But Anthony, let me just kind of go over the fourth quarter, and then we're going to react to all of this. So after the game, there was really only 1 stop through 3 quarters. That was it. It was that second quarter Bills stop, the end of the half when the Chiefs took the knee. Who counts that? But now Steve Spagnuolo had made adjustments. Finally, he realized we got to stop their running game, and he started to. Josh Allen later takes a couple of deep shots because he realizes, well, they're playing everything up now. But here's the point. The defensive stops really started coming. He had 5 different stops. First of all, the Chiefs had that fake punt. They were going to punt anyway, but they punt. They see 10 men on the field for the Chiefs, and they check into a run. Drew Tranquill is a very good linebacker. The player on the edge who was going to have to set that block, that wasn't his typical job. He's not like a defensive player in that role. Drew Tranquill blows the play up. Instead of the Chiefs being in their own territory, they get around the 30. And at that point, Pacheco, quick, powerful run inside the 5. And we're going to go to this, and then we're going to stop and get back to more. Andy Reid, I always say, why do these coaches try to out-genius themselves? You've got Pacheco. You've got Kelsey. You got Rashee Rice. But he continues to go back to getting cute, giving the ball to these ancillary players who have issues. Now, when you were the Chiefs scoring 37 points a game, fine. You make a mistake, so what? You'll score 3 more touchdowns before you know it. Gives the ball to Mecole Hardman. And, of course, he fumbles it. And, of course, it goes outside the end zone. And, of course, the Bills get the ball on the 20. Before we get deeper into that crazy fourth quarter, what was your take on that between the punt fake, between Pacheco, and between the fumble? What was your take at that point? What were you thinking?
Typical Andy Reid. We know Andy Reid likes to deep dive into his playbook, especially in these big games. But this isn't, like you said, that old Kansas City Chiefs team that was scoring at will. It seemed like a lot of times this season, anytime you get these supplementary players involved, good things don't happen, which is why Tony hasn't been playing, which is why I don't even know where the hell Sky Moore is. Maybe he's hurt.
IR, they put him on IR, I think, right? Yeah.
But Mecole Hardman, I don't know why they brought him back. He's been nothing but a headache anytime he touches the ball. We saw that yesterday with the 2 fumbles. We saw that the week before, a couple of deep shots to him that didn't work out. So I don't know what's going on, but Andy Reid has enough of players he can now count on to move the football.
So at this point, we've got the fake punt, we've got the fumble through the end zone, and then we get 3 punts. This is all consecutive drives. After score, after score, after score, everything tightened up. About 5 minutes left in the game. Josh Allen is making a big, powerful, long run, and the Chiefs strip him. Fumbles are a complete luck proposition, whether you recover them, whether the opponent recovers them. It's a complete 50-50 crapshoot. We saw that in another game this week, which we'll talk about later. It was a crapshoot, and the Bills came up with the ball. Dalton Kincaid made a real nice play to kind of get his hand in there to keep the ball alive, because that could have actually gone to the house. What I also didn't say on the Hardman one, if Hardman doesn't get that ball, and they have 3 plays for the 2-yard line to get him, it's a 10-point game, and it's probably over, but it's not. So anyway, all these punts, and now the dust starts to settle, Anthony. Now, Josh Allen, I pointed this out earlier. At this point, he realized what the defense was doing. And he realized, well, I could go deep on them now because they're no longer playing the shell. And he had great opportunities to Sherfield, who couldn't hang on to one. He did throw one deep to Stephon Diggs. Those both could have been caught. But, of course, it doesn't happen. And then, of course, Chiefs, Bills. It's always coming down to the very end, right? And the Bills, they get in the field goal range. And they could have had more, but fine enough. They're field goal range. Not long, 44 yards. And, man, you know what, Anthony? You're way younger than me, but you're old enough to remember the Bills Super Bowl against the Giants. Yeah. Scott Norwood. Short field goal, goes wide with it. Well, man, Tyler Bass, oh, my gosh. One thing, I don't see too many kicks from the right hash starting in and hooking back to the outside. Usually they'll hook like a curveball and it might go wide left. It goes wide flipping right. And now Pacheco needs 2 runs to move the chains. Mahomes kneels down. And man, if you were not a fan of either team, you were just enjoying the moment. If you were a fan of one of the teams, you had an emotional investment. Anthony, what was going on in your mind at the end of this game?
I thought it was going to come down like the way, and everybody likes to talk about the NFL script. And well, if this was a movie script, you thought this was going to come down to, okay, Buffalo's going to tie it or they're going to score and Mahomes is going to have 1:30 left. And that's plenty of time. Like the Chiefs, in my opinion, they were winning this game regardless. I just thought Buffalo was either going to score, kick the field goal, and then we were going to see the Money Mahomes magic. the Tom Brady magic, whatever you want to call it, and he brings them down for that final field goal or final touchdown. But this pushed right kick, it did bring up the Scott Norwood memory. And if people don't remember, that was the first of 4 consecutive Bills Super Bowl appearance that they lost all 4, all to NFC East teams, 2 to Dallas consecutively and previously to Washington and New York. But who knows, if that kick is made the way luck is, the way this world is, maybe they win 4 in a row.
Yes. So back to the whole sequence. Now, look, the drive unfolds the way the drive unfolds. And Josh Allen, the passes downfield were great. We said on one he could have checked down to Diggs, could have gotten something more. There were opportunities. And ultimately, they teased Allen, and he took the bait to a degree. With you pointed out, there was too much time on the clock. The Bills have been down this road before, and I know this is not Patrick Mahomes of 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but in this game, he looked like that guy. And you've got to pull a 49ers. You've got to drain the freaking clock down, and then you got to make it a point to drive for the touchdown. You can't play up for the field goal. But again, the incomplete passes are what they are. And the run was effectively taken away. But the Bills, they got caught up in it, and they did not have adjustments. Joe Brady has not been on the stage, did not get the right adjustments at the right time. I feel this is a game they could have drained the clock. They could have had a great chance to score a touchdown, certainly a shorter field goal. But again, they were playing out of control when the game required the utmost in control. Go ahead. You there?
No, you went out there for a second.
Oh, it was my stupid phone. I got a message from my wife. I'm sorry. So anyway, I was saying, I think the Bills got out of control, and they're Joe Brady not being up to the moment. I really feel that cost them because they played too wild down the stretch. A controlled drive could have actually won the game. Thoughts?
How much of it is on Joe Brady versus the decision-making of Josh Allen? In that final drive, they didn't need to score a touchdown. They needed a field goal. And we saw, I think, 2 of the final throws, he was trying to push it into the end zone, when I know at least one of those plays, he had 2 route runners open underneath. I think it was a 2nd or 3rd and 7 and a 4th and 7.
So all that said,
that's more on Josh Allen and Brady. I'm sorry.
Agreed. It is both, right? But see, here's the thing. If you're coaching Josh Allen, you know you've got a wild stallion already. You know that. And so you're talking into that headset till there are 15 seconds left. I really think if you're going to coach Josh Allen, you have to be in tune with getting to his headset and keeping him under control. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm an armchair quarterback. But as soon as they lost the control they had with that run game and Spagnuolo took it away, I just felt as a team, they didn't have answers.
Well, it also exposed the lack of wide receiver help, right? Gabe Davis, we all, I know he's inconsistent in fantasy, but he's also a big play threat in real football, which is what matters. So we had no Gabe Davis. Shakir is a nice player, but, what was left? Diggs is not the same guy. Whatever happened during the regular season, he's 30 years old or right around 30. He's not the biggest receiver in the world, and he has a lot of wear and tear. Maybe that plays a role. But when you're throwing in these big spots to Trent Sherfield, that's what you have to lean on. It gets, and they had a few receiver injuries during this game. So they, Buffalo needed to do a better job, at least this offseason, getting more wide receiver help, because the best wide receiver help they added this past, I get they brought in Kincaid. Sherfield was their biggest wide receiver addition. Man. That was it.
Man, and I thought it was ridiculous. They were playing Sherfield early in the season way more than Khalil Shakir. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys are missing the boat here. Shakir is a receiver. I get it, Sherfield blocks. I understand the importance of having a blocking wide receiver. But in Josh Allen's offense, maybe not so much. You mentioned getting help. Chris Bach had mentioned earlier that both teams should be in on Mike Evans. Buffalo could be creative with their salary because they are way over the cap going in the next year. But of course, we know there's always answers for that with creativity.
But they had their opportunity. His name was DeAndre Hopkins.
Oh my gosh, you're right. You're right.
Nuke
could have been on either teams, and that could have been a real game changer for both of them. Wow. All right. So the Bills are out of this one. Obviously now they're done, unfortunately. Is their window closed, or do they still have a legitimate shot to keep rolling with things?
Listen, a lot of us, including me a little bit, thought that window was closed this season, and we saw them battle, and they had a lot of injuries, and they moved off from Dorsey. And they went on this miraculous run. These players are going to get healthier. Now, they have some aging guys on defense. Maybe you got to turn over those contracts. I know they're paying Von Miller a lot. You got to replenish this offense. But anytime you have Josh Allen, you're going to be in it. You just need to get him some help because it all can't fall on his legs. And we saw that yesterday.
Now, Scott Kolb asked us, do we think Allen had a good game or did he come up short? Look, ultimately, the game as planned in the beginning was fantastic. But when Spagnuolo made the changes, Allen's a great physical specimen at quarterback, can make the incredible throws, can run, over people. Phenomenal talent. But I think a lot of times when it's not just pure physical talent, like him breaking a chain and throwing that dime in the end zone to Shakir. But I think when it comes down to it, some of the decision-making is problematic. And that's the good with the bad with Josh Allen. Not everybody can be everything. And to me, in these big games, sometimes it's, the wild stallion comes out. And rightfully so. Those are good throws downfield to Sherfield and Diggs. Those were passes that should have been completed, not Allen's fault. So we have a completely different discussion if either one of those passes are caught. So, but it's regardless, it's always a lower percentage pass when you are throwing deep. It's just the nature of the beast. But so it's really hard to qualify this in terms of Allen because he made the plays. His teammates came up short. What are your thoughts on how Allen gets viewed out of this game?
The best version of Josh Allen, and I was on the boat last offseason. Hey, he's going to take a beating if he keeps running like this. And we saw him try to limit that, I feel like, early this season. The best version of Josh Allen is when you let him play Josh Allen football. And I think the way we view him shouldn't really change coming out of this game. This is who Josh Allen is. And I'm starting to think, again, go get him the wide receivers other teams have. Right? Like even Mahomes, I know he doesn't have great receivers, but, Rashee Rice, I would put him on par of where Stephon Diggs is today, not Stephon Diggs last year. But, Rice and Diggs are probably interchangeable today. And I'll take Kelsey still today over what Buffalo has. Like, go give Josh Allen some more weapons.
Now, the other thing I want to point out is, and you mentioned it with Josh Allen, Steve Spagnuolo is a championship-level defensive coordinator. Very few coaches are great with making the adjustments that he's able to make. And he had players out on that defense. He lost players during that game. Willie Gay was his spy, and he lost him. Steve Spagnuolo still rolled aces. And Josh Allen, again, he made a couple of great throws that didn't work out, but when the story's over, he didn't have the answers. They didn't win the game. And that's what we have to view it on. So it's really complicated. Now, Murray brings up about not enough Kincaid, and then Scott brings up where was Dawson Knox. I believe Dawson Knox got injured, right? He went to the 10th. He got a pretty good shot to the head. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was concussed, but it was a pretty ridiculous shot. But remember, so I want to point this out. Dalton Kincaid had been a very viable part of the offense. And then it was like weeks 12 to 14 or something like this. His yards per target went from like 8 or 9 a game. He was less than 3 yards per target over a 3-game stretch. And then the last 3 games of the season, they fixed it. They finally got him back. And it was the highest yards per target Kincaid had all season in those last 3 games. So they overcorrected it. But then in the playoff game, they kind of froze up a little bit. And I thought with the injuries that the Chiefs had at linebacker, I do think Kincaid could have been more of an issue. But Dawson Knox, part of the deal is he has to be phased out of the offense for Dalton Kincaid to be a weapon that he is, because he's the weaponized tight end. Dawson Knox is nice at the goal line, but he's not a part of the offense that's going to make this a formidable offense. Any thoughts on the tight end usage?
Kincaid's a nice player, and I think the reason why they drafted him, maybe they want to try to replicate what we are seeing with Sam Laporta and Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews and other places in the NFL. He's also a first-year tight end.
Correct.
And I also feel like Kincaid was at his best when Dawson Knox was injured. Not so much in a two tight end situation, which when Knox came back, we saw a little bit of a dip in Kincaid's production.
So all that said, we'll kind of put a bow on this one. Chiefs again, AFC Championship game. That's where they live every year, it seems. I did not see this coming when the playoffs started. The Chiefs looked like they're a team that was they made the playoffs great, but I certainly was not optimistic about them. But again, we talk about playoff football all the time and specific game planning and Spagnuolo with the adjustments. Andy Reid, look, I still ding him for that Mecole Hardman thing, and I don't think he's ever going to learn that lesson. But fundamentally, he had a very good game plan. And the main game plan, as I said earlier, and I intimated this quickly, was that we knew that Terrell Bernard was out. We knew that Dodson was way less than 100%. And we knew that they would find a way, Andy Reid, to target the linebackers, and Travis Kelce in the first half ate them alive. And that was the mark, and that's what they were able to do. And then they went to the run game later. But again, I think coaching, even though there were mistakes made by Kansas City, coaching ended up being the difference. Anything there?
Yeah, and you have to give the edge to the coaching of Kansas City. Both of their Andy Reid, Spags, a lot of other members of they've been in these spots before. They've won Super Bowls before. And this is why, for weeks on this show and on my show, I would come in saying, eventually Kansas City's going to get it. I'm going to continue to back Kansas City until somebody knocks them off the pedestal, because they do have these edges in big spots.
All right, so they are on to play Baltimore. To tune in tomorrow on Tuesday. We'll do a preview on that game. John, I see you have points about the 49ers and Packers. Jordan Love, we're going to cover that game now. All right, Packers, 49ers. So we'll have to unpack this
Jim,
one. Yep.
Just want to intervene for a second. A little bit of breaking news.
Oh, what do you got?
From Tom Pelissero, NFL Network, Zach Ertz signing with the Detroit Lions. This is a corresponding move to number 2 tight end Brock Wright going down with a forearm injury.
Wow. So Zach Ertz could see a couple targets in the game. Obviously, Laporta is their guy, so he's not going to horn in on that. But that still is big news because he could get some snaps if they play some 2 tight end sets, which they may need to. So great interruption on that one. And Anthony put that in the thing too. So you guys are right at brilliant minds catching the news and seeing it the same way. All right, Packers 49ers. Again, we'll unpack this piece by piece, Anthony. So when it starts out, it's January, and we're, obviously there's a California game, but we have playoff football and playoff weather. We had cold weather in Baltimore. In the winter, you might get snow games. Well, it happened to be rain in this one, and a lot of it. And the beauty of January football is the elements for the outdoors games adds another piece of adversity that teams need to work through. And I think that's some of the beauty of the NFL playoffs. Obviously like basketball, all indoors, no big, but this is an added point here. Now, so we had that, and I'm starting to wonder. I had no take on it. I didn't have a take as to whether one team would be more impacted by it, not pregame. Did you have any pregame thought as to whether the weather would be a factor for either team before the game started again?
Weather's not always the best, right? But my concern was I think it evens the playing field a little bit, because if I'm going to give a weather advantage to any team in the NFL, a lot of times it's the Green Bay Packers.
Right, coming from the frozen tundra, they're all about that toughness. And look, I'm going to say this now before we get into the game. The equipment staff of the Packers was miles ahead of the 49ers. If you noticed, 49ers defenders were slipping around. Packers, not so much. They were keeping their feet. That was a big tactical advantage by the Green Bay equipment staff. Anything there?
I mean, they were ready for it, right? You got to be ready in these situations. And you got to watch the weather report.
Man, and have answers for it. I mean, this is not like this. This is not hard to find out if you're an equipment manager of a team. There are answers for these things. And the 49ers, they've had weather games at home. They've had, I remember that big rain game they had last year. They're used to rain games. They were not prepared. All right. But anyway, all week we found out the Packers wanted the ball first, just like against Dallas. They want to get an early lead. And that was a key to success in my mind for them to win, was to get a lead. The 49ers were on record as saying they're deferring. Because what Kyle Shanahan wants, he wants the ball at the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half to turn a game. Both teams ended up getting what they wanted. Now, from the Green Bay side, we'll start here. They get in the red zone in their first 3 drives. Beautiful. The Matt LaFleur, amazing coach, scheming players open. Aaron Jones running like a beast, run past balance, moving the ball. Get to the red zone first time, they got to kick a field goal. The second time, 4th and 1, they sneak the quarterback. Short, turn it over on downs. After the 49ers score a touchdown, they have to settle for another field goal. At this point, when the Packers had 3 possessions, 3 in the red zone, 6 points, I started thinking in the back of my mind, I wonder if this is going to cost them. What were you thinking at that point? And they were losing 7-6 after that third drive.
Similar to my thoughts that we just talked about with the last game with the Buffalo, like you need to score touchdowns in these situations, and that is what Green Bay opened up and did to Dallas. They got into the end zone, and I feel like teams like the 49ers, right? I heard a stat this morning somewhere in national media that the 49ers, they have not won a game in which they were losing by 7 points going into the fourth quarter. Under Kyle Shanahan. And I thought that was crazy, but I'm going to believe it. I heard it. And it just shows teams like Dallas, look at Miami, look at the 49ers. And I think that's why LaFleur wants the ball first. Let's get them off their game plan. What they want to do is they want to get off to a lead, and they want to pin their ears back on defense, rush the passer, play their type of football, create turnovers, run the football. And if you can try to get them off that, play a little bit differently. Again, the perfect example was Dallas, was Kansas City last week. And LaFleur, he had success moving the football, but couldn't score the football. And instead of getting field goals on the board, let's say that's 14 points, then we're 14-7 going into halftime. This could have been a different ball game.
Yeah, there are so many moving pieces in this game. Now, when the 49ers actually scored their touchdown, it was one of the few dimes that Brock Purdy dropped all night. George Kittle got a little bit behind his defender, and Kittle didn't have to move his hands. He just dropped it right in the bucket. It was a perfect pass, 32-yard touchdown. Anders Carlson had made that second short field goal. So, again, like you're saying, 7-6 Green Bay, about 4 minutes in the half. They were outplaying the 49ers. But they were losing, and there was a problem there. Now, the 49ers, I said earlier, they got what they wanted. They get the ball at the end of the half, but somehow Kyle Shanahan, and I know Deebo Samuel's out, all right, and that is a big part of their offense. You could tell from the minute of the beginning, we all knew you attack Green Bay in the middle of the field. Deebo was his best weapon in the middle of the field, but Shanahan did not make the proper adjustments. And then they get the ball in the scenario they want. And they have a chance to they drive the field, score a touchdown, go 14-6. And what does he do? He gets conservative. He starts draining the clock, playing for a field goal. Field goal gets blocked. They don't even go up 10-6. They're still 7-6. What was your thought on that drive?
I didn't like the way they played that drive. Again, you need to score touchdowns in these situations, and you need to be aggressive sometimes. I think we need to see a little bit more aggression. These are win-or-go-home games. There is no next week. You got to play for the win, and I didn't really get that vibe this week compared to last week. In
this first half, it was clear that the better offensive coach was Matt LaFleur over Kyle Shanahan. Again, it was the run-pass balance, but as always, LaFleur has the advantage of having a number of very good receivers, no superstar. The defense can't really focus on any one of them. And so when LaFleur is scheming people open, it's like the defense can't say, all right, we got to stop him because it's his next guy up. And that's an advantage they have. But there are a couple things with Shanahan. And again, maybe the Debo thing threw him off, but he was not scheming people open. But I noticed after the injury, there was more attention placed on Brandon Ayuk. So now at that point, because remember, you got McCaffrey, you got Ayuk, you got Debo, you got Kittle. You can't stop all four of them. But you take one of them out, now all of a sudden from a passing game perspective, you could bracket one. All right, now you're playing.
That impact the running game too with Debo and his versatility. Yes. And you know where, especially let's say in a goal line or a third down situation, trying to convert a fourth down, you can run your little gadget play where CMC or Debo will get. If you take Debo out, not only does it take a threat of catching the football, but it takes that running threat away as well. So I think you game plan against the 49ers completely different when Debo is out. Like, yeah, Ayuk would be a big absence. Kittle would be a big absence, but I think Debo's is the main source there.
Now, we like to throw shade on Joe Barry, but I can't do it here. It was a well-designed game plan. So the 49ers offensive line, we grade them somewhat high for pass blocking because they have Trent Williams on the left side and Purdy gets the ball out quickly. It's not that they have good blockers outside of Trent Williams. They don't. The other four blockers are not very good pass blockers. But because of the scheme, the system, and Trent Williams, they make it work, right? Well, Green Bay, that defensive line, they're very talented. They came to play. There were two things working against Purdy. We saw it in the Cleveland game. In the rain, small hands, he was having issues with the ball. He's on the one play. He actually took his hand down, wiped it out his pants, put it back up and threw the ball. He is not a good wet weather quarterback. But the other thing was that the pressure, they kept collapsing the pocket on him, and Purdy was holding the ball longer. He looked uncertain. And the Packers are doing a nice job of defense. The weather, Purdy did not do well here. And it was a great job by the Packers defense, but they kept this offense of the 49ers. They did not look like a world beater offense. They looked like, this looks like a pretty ordinary group. Any assessment on that?
I like Brock Purdy. And I think he's a very good quarterback. I also think he's a system quarterback. Like if you had to rank all of the quarterbacks in the playoffs, Brock Purdy's, especially at the Final Four, he's clearly last. But again, in the system, he's amazing. But in these games, when we factor in an early injury and you have to adjust, and especially it's a key player like Debo, and you have to factor in weather, we are going to see the flaws. And again, going back to my first point about Green Bay getting field goals over touchdowns, if they have that 14-7 lead, the game's a little bit more on Brock Purdy than Christian McCaffrey. And again, Brock Purdy under adversity, it's not always looking good.
No. Now, earlier in the season, when the 49ers were humming, you would notice in the box score, it was almost all the touches went to McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle. Very few touches went to any other player. There were important plays in the second half, Anthony, where I saw a combination of Juwan Jennings, Ray McLeod, and Chris Conley on the field. All of a sudden, I'm looking at this and saying, this isn't that impressive. Now, Juwan Jennings is a dog. That guy can block all day, and he's a good receiver too. But he's not somebody you're gonna be like, yeah, we got him. He's a super. He's a very good NFL player. But I mean, when those three guys or combination of them was on the field, I'm thinking to myself, wow, this does not look like so formidable. But anyway, coming out of the locker room, the 49ers, as they wanted. Remember, they wanted the ball before the end of the first half. They bonked that, didn't score at all. Got a blocked field goal. Then they get it in the second half. All right, so Kyle Shanahan, now you got to come out with a big drive here, open it to 14-6, and call it a day. Nope, didn't really happen. Packers continue to have the answers on defense. Again, pressure on Purdy, making him throw up his back foot. Defensive backs gumming up the pass lanes, making Ayuk struggle to get open, putting extra attention on him. But like we said earlier, it was Purdy. But they did not get that score coming out of the drive. And at that point, you kind of knew, if you weren't already aware of this, you were like, the Packers have a real chance. But Anthony, here's the thing I want to focus on before I get your next take. Then after that missed drive by the 49ers open the second half, it was haymaker city. Packers 3rd and long. Melton draws a pass interference. Next play, 49ers defender slips. Melton's open. Touchdown. Packers have the lead. 49ers jump right down the field. McCaffrey, 39-yard burst. Touchdown. Not over. Green Bay comes right back. Still 5:23 left in the third quarter. Tucker Kraft touchdown. Aaron Jones 2-point conversion. We had 3 touchdowns in a short period of time. And this game is 21-17, and it has gotten wild. And then, like you said, we got that stat. End of the quarter, whistle sounds, and 49ers are lining up for a field goal, but we go into the fourth quarter. They haven't kicked it yet. We hear that they're 0-30 in that scenario when they're trailing. Start the fourth quarter. Moody hits the field goal. It's a 1-point game. All that craziness in the third, Anthony. Melton touchdown. McCaffrey touchdown. Kraft touchdown. What were you thinking at that point?
You immediately think this is going to end up the team with the ball in their hand last wins, or the team that turns it over. They're going to lose. It's going to be one of those types of ball games. But then you pump the brakes a little bit, and you think about pound for pound, who's the better football team? That's the 49ers. And if you're going to go in a back and forth scoring fest, eventually the 49ers are going to come on top. But it didn't really end up that way. It was actually, to me, the Green Bay missed field goal that ended up being the difference here.
Yeah, we'll get to that one in a minute. We're definitely going to get to that one. But yeah, so at that point, we had the wild group of haymakers. And then the defense has showed up a little bit, and it slowed down. And then all of a sudden, we've got ourselves down to the end of the game. Packers, they're trying to get this go-ahead score, set things up. Aaron Jones, phenomenal 53-yard run, weaving in and out of traffic, hoping to find a lane to take this thing to the house. Unfortunately, he can't, because if he does, they're probably going on to the next round. But again, they stall out, and in comes Anders Carlson for a field goal attempt. This would have extended the lead to 7. Yeah. So basically, worst case scenario, we're going to overtime if he makes us. And just like we would see the next day with Bass, the kick goes wide. What was your thought at that point when you saw that kick go wide, Anthony?
Momentum shifter, because if you're in that spot and you miss that kick, and it could have happened to Moody, right? Like Carlson, Moody, I believe both rookie kickers, and we've seen Moody miss some crucial kicks. I believe the big one against Cleveland earlier this year. But, for it to come down, like, that's just a big momentum shift. And I feel like at that point, nothing went well for Green Bay. We started seeing, like, they weren't connecting on their passes. It just, I don't know what it is, but it just didn't feel right from that point on. And I think it is a game of momentum. It's a game of inches.
Yes, it could not say that better. Momentum and a game of inches. So now, 49ers have the ball, moderate amount of time, but Kyle Shanahan is figuring to get this one right. We are going to drain the clock. We are going to run a drive. I know Brock Purdy has not played great in this game. He's been pressured. He's been inaccurate, wildly inaccurate in some plays. But we're going to put together one mother of a drive, and we're going to win this game. And my goodness, they did exactly what they set out to do. They made big plays when they needed to. The catch by Brandon Ayuk was sick. Ball was almost on the ground. It wasn't one of those passes where you're throwing it there, so he's the only one that could get it. It was one of those passes that Purdy was off. But Ayuk came through in superstar status with that opportunity. And then ultimately, Christian McCaffrey runs us in. There's about a minute left in the game. At that point, were you thinking, now, if you also notice, if you're watching the game closely, you notice right near the end of that drive, the rain picked up. It was coming down way heavier than it was earlier. And as McCaffrey runs it in, you see the rain. There's a minute left. What were your thoughts at that point?
Jordan Love. We're going to find out who Jordan Love is because we've seen two versions of Jordan Love, and I think it's unfair to think who he is how he started the season. But it was one of those situations to where, hey, if he gets the ball in this situation and gives us one of those drives and takes the Packers into win, then I think he's the real deal. Instead, we do see a little bit of I don't want to call it a regression, but almost like he was trying to do too much. One of those throws, and I think Olsen said it on the broadcast, you just don't make that throw across your body in that spot. I think he had another down or two left in the tank as well. So it was just, I think, a brain freeze.
So, look, Jordan Love has had a phenomenal season, and he's going to be a very good quarterback in this league for a very long time. I still think that what we saw earlier in the season, that's part of who he is as a quarterback. But Matt LaFleur he is one of the best coaches in the league. And he figured out, this is my talented receiver. This is what I have in my quarterback. And notice how all those mistakes that Love made were going away. It's because Matt LaFleur was consistently putting Love in position to throw the ball to his strengths. He started eliminating the weak. You notice those downfield throws that there were prayers. Those weren't getting thrown much anymore. Matt LaFleur reined his quarterback in, played to his strengths. And this coach and quarterback are going to be together for a long time. Yeah. So Jordan Love wheels up. But like you said, here was the problem on the last drive. With early in the game, throughout 55 minutes of that game, 58 minutes of it, they had a run-pass balance, and it was that Aaron Jones was kicking tail on the ground, and that allowed the pass game to be even better. You knew with 1 minute left in the game, the run game was not in the equation. Now that 49ers front four, who hadn't really gotten the love in the whole game, they could pin their ears back because they knew on every play he had to throw, and they just started bringing it. And even though they may not have knocked him down, they were making the issue very tense. And on that Love interception, so they had moved the ball. They had 3 plays, 11 yards. They moved the chains once, and it was first down, I believe, when Jordan Love throws this ball away. And he's scrambling right. So he's out of the pocket. All he's got to do is just throw the ball to the sideline. 2nd and 10. Clock is stopped. You're fine. The heave he threw, like you said, across his body, there were 3 defenders there. Yeah. His receiver had like no chance of catching the ball, and it was a driving rainstorm. There were all these things, but he's young, right? He's young. He's got adrenaline. He wants to make the play, and I just think as a young guy, inexperienced in the stage of a game, I think it just got to him, and I think he just made that error. It's not going to hold him back going forward. This is one of those things. It's unfortunate. It's terrible timing. But I don't think it's a knock on Jordan Love. It's just one of those things. You don't find yourself in these situations until it's too late. So what were your thoughts there?
I feel like it's, yes, it's young, but it's also the mentality. Like Jordan Love has that gunslinger rhythm. And we brought it up with the whole Josh Allen trying to go for the win rather than trying to move the chains and playing for the field goal. We saw that out of Baker, and we'll get to that in a little bit, where I don't think Jared Goff makes that play. There's quarterbacks who won't make that play and play for the next down. And then there's the gunslinger mentality. And that's just who Jordan Love is. You're going to win a lot of games that way, and you're going to lose a couple games that way.
You know what? You encapsulated that well, because he is in essence, he is a gunslinger. And when it gets off script, you go to what you are. It goes beyond thinking. It goes to, this is your default switch. And this is something he got away with probably in high school, probably in college. But in the NFL, sometimes you're not able to get away with that. And by the way, Dre Greenlaw just attacking that ball in the air. What a stud. I love Dre Greenlaw. Anyway, last thing Anthony brings up, and the chat brings up, Jordan Love, quarterback 8 to 10 in redraft last year. How do you feel about that?
I'll put him closer to the back of the first, top 12 quarterbacks. I want to see what Green Bay does with these wide receivers this offseason. They're young. They're solid. They're also not paying a lot of their skill position players anything. I'd like them to go out and get a more solidified number 1 wide receiver, or at least a 2, to get Jordan Love a little bit more help.
Now, this is going to be an interesting angle I want to add to this. Packers defense was awful in many games this year, and they were playing from behind. Aaron Rodgers was in this offense. And remember, he was only throwing the ball about 524 times a year. That's all he was throwing. This year, because they trailed so much, it was like 580 attempts for Jordan Love. And if the Packers are able to improve their defense by either bringing in a new coordinator, or they don't need to draft a single player on offense, they could spend their whole draft on defense. If that defense gets better, we know that Matt LaFleur does not want his quarterback throwing the ball all day. It will be a balanced offense with a lot of running if it works to his liking. Is that something potentially to consider?
Certainly. And I like that you brought up the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, because we did see his numbers take a little bit of a hit towards the end under LaFleur. So, yeah, if this defense does improve, and we've seen it improve, I don't know if Joe Barry's the answer. But, yeah, I mean, we need to consider who LaFleur is and the type of offense he wants to run. And it's not really the offense that throws the ball that much.
Well, we spent a lot of time, but these two games were so intense and so high profile it needed to be. We'll be a little quicker on these last two games, but Buccaneers, Lions, and this was a great one too. This was a phenomenal football game to watch. Now, these teams played in week 6, Anthony, and in week 6, Detroit relentlessly attacked the middle of the field. 15 targets to St. Brown, 11 to Laporta, who didn't do much in that game, but they were without Gibbs in that game, and David Montgomery got knocked out early after 6 carries, but they still blew out the Lions 20-6 in week 6, and that was in Tampa Bay. Now, coming into this game, I assumed, well, look, they know the recipe to beating this defense. They got to, attack the middle of the field. Now, Todd Bowles didn't blitz as much. That was a little bit of a surprise because his DNA is blitz, blitz, blitz. He did blitz, but not to the degree as usual. I also thought that Tampa Bay would sell out to stop Mike Evans and let the other guys beat them. They didn't. They did not at all. Evans was often wide open. That was interesting. Anyway, first half, this game's 10-10. I thought the Lions were not you know what? Ben Johnson did not have a great first half. It was not the first half they should have had. They should have come out and been able to score some points. They didn't. This was a complete game at the half. What were your thoughts that went in the halftime 10-10?
Tampa Bay is a live underdog, and Lions at home, you would think how this game finishes, how it was going to start. They should have really handled this team. Tampa Bay, you make the case they shouldn't have been there. But here they were, and they were playing sensational football. A lot of credit out to Baker Mayfield and a lot of the veteran players on this team for stepping up. But yeah, when you're looking at 10-10 going in halftime, Detroit didn't look great offensively. It looked like the Todd Bowles defense was firing on all cylinders. Okay, yeah, this is going to be a game. And I really thought Tampa Bay would be the team going into San Francisco next week. That really crossed my mind.
Yes. And look, my bet of the week was the Lions -6. And I was a little bit nervous. I thought that they would be able to still control the game. I thought they would still win by at least by a touchdown. That idea I had of a blowout, that was now off the table. That was not going on. But so I was hopeful to get through because I pushed a lot of people in that direction to bet that game. But now third quarter. What we noticed from the Lions, they started to get Jahmyr Gibbs heavily involved. They made it more of a point to get Laporta and St. Brown, which we thought pregame. That was the answer. We kind of knew that was the answer. They finally figured that out. Now, in the midst of the Lions scoring touchdowns on 3 drives, it's 17-17 at the end of the third quarter. But then in that fourth quarter, the Lions just keep trucking. And now they're up 31-17. They figured it out, like I said. Gibbs, middle of the field, pound them, and it worked well. The defense was coming up with enough stops, getting pressure on Mayfield. It's 31-17. And at that point, Anthony, did you think it was easily over, or were you still concerned?
At that point, it was over. When we saw that momentum Detroit had, because it was tight, right? Tie game going to the fourth quarter, you think, okay, Tampa Bay still has a chance. But then you brought it up. We see Gibbs get involved. And I think Gibbs was the difference maker for a lot of especially in the first half. The Lions were throwing more than we were used to seeing, which is not their identity. We started seeing them kind of get back to their identity. Gibbs finishes with 9 for 74 on the ground, 4 for 40 as a receiver. His dynamic skill set was showcased, especially late in the game as a receiver out of the backfield. Laporta was pretty solid all game. Amon-Ra St. Brown was the one who started cooking as a receiver late. And that was a difference.
He looked great. It was finally he played superstar ball. They gave him the opportunity to play superstar ball. That was the thing. They gave him the opportunity to do that, and it worked well. So now, but that said, 31-17, Baker Mayfield gets the ball back. And the Lions start playing a little more passive on defense, and Mayfield drives them right down the field. They score a touchdown. And now we all know the analytics thing behind it is that you go for 2 when it's a 2-touchdown game and you score 1, because if you make the 2 and then you do score again, you kick the point and you win. If you miss the 2, then you just go for a 2. You think your 50%, get 1, miss 1 is in play. So you're playing to win, but also being to have a good chance to get the tie, should you miss 1, make 1. So that was exactly the proper call based on the way teams have figured this out. But the Bucs on D, they hold. They get the ball deep in their own territory. There's about 2 minutes left. At that point, did you think Baker's got it in to bring this team all the way back?
Part of me did, yeah, because of, again, Baker was almost out of the league last year until Sean McVay got a hold of him for a couple of minutes. And I, for one, thought Baker Mayfield was going to be benched for Kyle Trask at some point this year, very early. But I think this is what Baker Mayfield has in him in big spots. There was a stat going into this game that Baker was, I believe, 3-0 against the spread in the playoffs with like a 7 or 8 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio. Baker Mayfield is built for these games.
So they get that last drive. It doesn't last long. Couple plays. Baker throws one in. Great defensive play. I want to back up. That 2-point conversion. Mike Evans made a critical error. If Mike, and receivers know this, that ball was hanging up in the air. The defender was in front of him. All Evans had to do was make a play toward the ball, and it would have been interference 10 out of 10 times. He sat back. The defender never really even hit him. And so it was not a penalty, and it was not called. And, hey, Wendy's in the house. All right. But anyway, Anthony, on that one, critical error by Evans, or am I overreacting?
Listen, veteran receiver, he knows the rules. I would say it's pretty critical, yeah.
And fortunately for me, I got this -6, and now that keeps it at 8. So I'm like, whew, Evans makes that catch, and the 6 push. I had a couple 6.5s, so I would have lost those. But yeah, for bettors, that was a critical one. If you, again, depending which side you bet and what you got the line at, but that's what gambling's all about. It comes down to that one play. But Anthony, Mayfield throws the interception. It's over. End of the day. Lions move. Go ahead. Yep.
Did you see there's a tweet going around, and I think Bowles even addressed it, that he could have called timeout when Detroit was kneeling and forced them to kick a field goal.
Right.
You got to call anything can happen, whether you punt, field goal, you block it, you got to call that timeout. I'm sorry. I don't want to hear anything about being competitive. It's over. It's never over.
No,
I'm sorry. I think, you want to talk about critical errors. You have to call that timeout.
You're talking the end of the game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've been watching the game and I'm thinking they got the little dot on there. They have a timeout left. And I go, they didn't miss that one. I'm thinking to myself, there's a timeout here. And I'm thinking, because I'm doing the calculus on this, Anthony. There's 2 minutes left, or there's like 1:40. 2 knees, that's 80 seconds. That means they're probably getting the ball back, right?
Yeah.
I don't understand that. And as I was really thrown up by that, and I thought maybe Fox made that error of not taking off, but they didn't. That was a massive error.
There's a whole tweet thread on it.
Okay,
and it's on at the Real NFL Guru. Go check it out. I just retweeted it.
Oh, good.
But it's and the guy, whoever did it, did a good. It's at FFB Fanatics, does a good job in the thread putting Todd Bowles in the post-game press conference in it. So it's a really good breakdown of it. But when I saw this, I'm like, how do you not call that timeout?
I just reposted that myself. Did that come from Fantasy Fanatics? Yeah, I reposted that. So perfect. Thank you for that. All right. So that said, we're not going to spend much time on the Bucs. Let's just we got 53 minutes in. Let's go to the Texans-Ravens game. Anthony, basically when I'm thinking about this game, this is textbook playoff football by the Ravens. They withstand the first half punches from a scrappy visiting team. They come out of the locker room in the second half, methodically run their offense, wear down the defense, no panic, anaconda, just wrap around, squeeze, and there we have it. In terms of that well-coached team, just understanding the nature of playoff football, what were your thoughts on that part?
this is what we expect from the Baltimore Ravens. Like when I watch the Baltimore Ravens play football, it's not always going to be pretty early, but they're going to squeeze the life out of you. And I think that's what we saw here when you look at how this game started versus how it unfolded. Some of the best bets of the week were the under on CJ Stroud passing yards. I just didn't give Houston much of a shot in this. Early, this was another game that unfolded going into halftime tied. And then the Baltimore Ravens football took over. Lamar Jackson took over, and there was just no answer for Lamar Jackson, like just zero.
This is going to sound dumb in a game that was a blowout loss. Kaimi Fairbairn misses a field goal in the first half. Now, remember, the touchdown was Steven Sims, punt return up the middle. How many of those do you see? Not many. But anyway, if Fairbairn makes that field goal and they go into the locker room up 13-10, when you're 10-10, hey, we're the Ravens, we're at home, 0-0, just like we came out at the beginning. This is a team, not all the players on them, but they have a little playoff history that hasn't been great. They're 1-3 in Lamar Jackson's games. If they go into this halftime game down 13-10, only 3 points, is it possibly a different mentality in the locker room that they could get a little tight?
Maybe, but again, I just the way this unfolded in the second half with Baltimore, it's hard. You can make that case with the way Tampa Bay played and how gritty they were, but it just seemed like when you watch this Texans game, the one thing that kept them in it was that special teams play. This offense couldn't get going at all, so it's not like they had any type of momentum to build off of.
No, when I finally got my moment of clarity Friday about this game, and on XM on Saturday, I was like, look, I was talking with Mario Puig, and I'm like, look, people are trying to say that the Texans are going to cover. The Ravens have beat many playoff teams by more than 2 touchdowns.
Yes.
This is a dominant team. The Texans were a great story, and they played a number of great games, but this is the game where not having Tank Dell, we broke his leg however many weeks ago, and not having even Noah Brown's not a great player, but it's depth in the receiving core. And I said, ultimately, the Ravens are not going to let Nico Collins beat them. Now, if you noticed, there were a lot of times Collins had no room to move. When he was open, it's because they said pressure and they were flushing out Stroud. And so they didn't mind leaving him open because they were trying to make something else happen. But they were never going to let Nico Collins beat them. And here's the other thing, Anthony. I said this as well. Devin Singletary puts up numbers, so fantasy players like him. But I said this. I said, he is not a sustaining runner. He'll get you a 1, a 2, a 16, a 1, a 3. He doesn't move the chains. His numbers are okay. And in this game, I think it was the same. I think he had a 16-yard run, and then the rest of his carries went for 6 yards. And this was against a Ravens team that plays the lightest boxes in the league. They dare you to run on them. And I said they would never be able to run the ball. Therefore, they would be able to bracket Collins or handle him how they want, and there would be nothing much else that CJ Stroud could do. As great as he is, you've got to have weapons. Thoughts?
Yeah, especially when you're facing a team like the Ravens, who will eventually, when you look at what they bring to the table offensively, they just have so many guys that can beat you. You need to be able to answer when they start cooking, because they are going to cook 9 times out of 10. And just the Texans had no answer. Once you took out Nico Collins or limited Nico Collins, where are you going?
Now, I'm going to give the Texans defense some credit. The first half, they played well. The Ravens only scored 10 points in the first half. It was not a show of force in the first half. And the Texans, deeply flawed defense. The linebackers have a real issue. Play action, they can't stop it. They've been very good against the run, but a good committed team to the run. And I said this before the game as well. I go, don't forget, Indy ran on this team for 200 yards. If you're a team committed to the run, you can run on Houston. And the Ravens showed that in the second half. But I mean, Jackson certainly ran for half of that, but they still, Justice Hill had success on the ground. Gus Edwards' final, he got dinged up. So they were able to run on them. And ultimately, the safeties were an issue too. So it was a game that was not a bad matchup for the offense, yet they still had 10 points in the first half. But Lamar, like you said, he had the answers. What happened was when Houston dropped coverage, they left the middle of the field open. Jackson took a couple of those easy runs up the middle. When the edges crashed in too hard on the pass rush, Jackson just stepped around. There was nobody there. He had like 4 runs that the defense did not account for, and he made them pay terribly for it. But that said, it was a beautiful showing. Zay Flowers was largely taken away. They put Stingley on him, except for when he was in the slot. They made that difficult, but they didn't have to do much in the passing game. Go ahead.
It just felt like old Ravens, like since Monken's be there, we've seen a lot of terrific passing from Lamar Jackson, but this felt like vintage classic Lamar Jackson, 11 for 102, 152 yards on 22 attempts and 2 more touchdowns. Like just felt like old school Lamar Jackson. I'm going to take over this game in the second half and put it away because we shouldn't be tied.
Yeah, it was a beautiful thing. Now, tomorrow on this show, we're going to break down these 2 conference games, give you an early look at them, so you got all week to mull over them. But I do want to ask Anthony who wins these upcoming games. So the early game is the AFC game. That's kind of anticlimactic. But we're going to have the Chiefs at the Ravens. Who wins the game?
It's not going to – I think when it's all said and done, I'm going with the Kansas City Chiefs. Like I said, I'm going to stick with the Kansas City Chiefs until somebody knocks them off the pedestal, and I just don't think it's time. I don't think it's time.
The Ravens are the best team in football, and it's probably not close. The Chiefs have not been a consistently great team this year, but ultimately they have been there almost every single year. They have won Super Bowls. The pressure will never be too great for them. And Steve Spagnuolo, Andy Reid's a great coach. Steve Spagnuolo may be better on the defensive side of the football than Reid is on the offensive side of the football. And I know the Ravens should win this game by 17 points, but I am not for a second counting out the Chiefs. And like you said, I could see them winning. I could see the Chiefs winning because experience and coaching. And the Ravens have great coaches. There's nothing problematic there. But to have coached on those stages, that means something. Anything else, Anthony?
Lamar 1-3 lifetime against Kansas City. All games in the regular season, granted, but it's worth noting.
Oh, my gosh. All right, NFC game. The Lions, they're done with their games in Ford Field, but now they're going to go to San Francisco. Debo is a 50-50 shot to play in this one. Who wins this one?
I'm going with the Detroit Lions. If we don't get Debo, and I think this is a similar injury where he suffered earlier in the year where he missed a game or 2. I said it earlier, this offense is different. You defend it different without Debo. Even if he plays, I think he's not going to be 100%. And if I don't think he's going to be 100%, I don't know if Detroit is either. There's something special about this Lions team. There's something special about this football season where you said, the Ravens are the best team in the NFL. Well, so are the 49ers at one. And it just seems like there were so many different best teams in the NFL. There's so much parity in the NFL this year. And I think this upcoming week, we could see both underdogs bark on the road.
Wow.
And I'm going with the Detroit Lions. They have what it takes to match up with the 49ers really well.
Now, I will break this down in detail tomorrow, but the quick thought on this one is, Anthony, from my end, look, even Green Bay, you don't work the middle of the field against the 49ers. You cannot. Fred Warner and the safeties, you cannot work the middle of the field. The Lions' whole offense is the middle of the field. Because otherwise, you got Josh Reynolds, you got Jamison Williams, and that's the side part of the field you got to attack them with. And I think this is going to be a tough one for them. On the other side of the ball, Jonah Jackson, the left guard, incredible player. Knee injury, left the game. I doubt he plays. Frank Ragnow had a couple injuries in that game, and he was gutting it through. If Jackson's out and Ragnow is less than 100%, Javon Hargrave and Eric Armstead are going to eat their lunch, and they're going to be in Goff's face, and they're not going to be able to slide coverage because guess what? Nick Bosa and Chase Young are on the outside. So it's going to be a great game. Like you said, Debo's out. That's going to hurt. I am going to lean 49ers here. Any final words, Anthony?
That opening line, Ravens -3.5, 49ers 6.5.
Oh, my. Wow. 3.5. The Ravens are only 3.5 point favorites. Are they going to take that as a massive sign of disrespect?
I don't know because it's the Chiefs.
They were pissed when the 49ers what were the 49ers? 5-point favorites on the 49ers home field. They were pissed about it. I have to think that's going to be a rallying call in that locker room, that this team that's lapped the field and the Chiefs, who are okay, are own. I think that's going to be some billboard material. Not that they need motivation, but every little bit helps. Do you anything on that? No.
I think there's something there, but you could say the same thing about Detroit. You don't think Dan Campbell's going to say, "Hey, like, you know, they think we're not that they're a touchdown better than us"?
Oh man, you're right about that. But the Ravens, we're talking the best team in football. They de-pantsed so many good teams this year. Whereas the Lions, they're great, but I mean, they're playing at the 1 seed, right? Whereas the Ravens are the 1 seed. Oh my God, this is going to be a great week, Anthony Cervino. Anthony, tell everybody where they can find you and your great work.
Follow me at The Real NFL Guru on Twitter, at my live show at fffaceoff.com, and during the day here at RotoWire.
Join us tomorrow, Tuesday. We'll break down these games. I'll have Doug Orth on. Friday, we'll be back to do some prop betting. I'll be on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Channel, 8 to 10 Eastern PM time. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'll be on 1 to 3 Saturday and Sunday. Busy week there. Wow. This show again running. Remember to follow me on the X at Jim Coventry NFL. I will give conference championship notes. I'll have those available Tuesday. For Anthony Cervino, who will be back next Monday breaking down those conference championship games, I'm Jim Coventry. Have a great day, everyone.